everyone. This is Congressman Troy Balderson, and we're back to do our next podcast. Today we have a very special guest. Really excited to have a conversation, and I am honored and blessed to have Coach Urban Meyer with us today. And thank you for your history here in Ohio and what you've done and what you've done for Ohio State. So I got my first question right off the get-go is this weekend. It's game time. So we're actually going to be back in action on Saturday against Nebraska. And I'd love to have your insight and what you think is going to happen with the first game and kind of what you think is going to happen this season.
I know the great state of Ohio has been waiting for this. I know Ryan Day's been waiting for it, Gene Smith, and we have a great team. We have 2 more practices really to get through. That's the way coaches think about. We would always say when you have great players, get them to the dance. Don't get them hurt in practice. The reality is that football is a contact sport, and there hasn't been a lot of contact. No spring practice, minimal training camp, and there's 3 phases that are the most alarming. You can see it on college football on every Saturday, and it's blocking, tackling, and ball security. Those are the 3 that you cannot teach unless you have contact. And how do you have contact when you have great players going against great players without getting someone, a sprained ankle or someone hurt? So that's the biggest juggling act that Coach Day has right now is getting ready to play.
How's the outlook look for the Nebraska game? Any predictions?
Yeah, Ohio State's loaded. And Nebraska's – I'm a huge Nebraska fan just because of college football history. And Tom Osborne is a friend of mine. And, boy, they were in the 90s. They were it. They've really been struggling. They have a great, proud tradition. They've had 3 losing seasons, I believe. When they joined the Big Ten, I have really strong opinions on this, but I'm not sure that was the best move for Nebraska because your recruiting base is California and Texas. Why would you go play all these schools over in the East?
Oh, yeah.
The families can't go see you play. So there was a time where Nebraska was on every top 5 player, top 10, top 20 player in America. They're just not anymore. When I was at Ohio State or Florida recruiting those top, it really wasn't Nebraska like it used to be.
With COVID, it's impacted every family. How do you think the pandemic has affected the mindset of the athletes and the students leading into this?
Well, my daughter had COVID, and she is pretty much asymptomatic. She lost her taste. I have not had it. Shelley has not had it. We've been cautious, but we lived our life, though, too. We've been out and about. And so all I can speak to is Ohio State because I'm very familiar with the protocol and, wow, of our players and coaches. And I don't know if you could have done better what they've done.
Yeah, it's been great.
And the Big Ten commissioner and the presidents voted to stop fall sports and actually told to stand down. The parents refused. The players refused. Justin Fields' leadership, Ryan Day, Gene Smith, just the leadership of a handful of universities said we don't agree with this. And I think it was one of the best examples I've ever seen of you don't believe what was done was right, yet you're in an incredibly respectful manner. You said we're going to keep fighting this, even when they were told to say, we will not revisit this. So there were 2 choices when that happens. One is grab your bag, go home and complain about it, or just keep fighting with respect, which they did. And the players were phenomenal. The way they came out, and this is right after the Pac-12 put out a statement where the players said they don't trust their commissioner, they don't trust their coaches, they don't trust their doctors. They want third-party evaluation because they just don't trust them. The Big Ten came out, and specifically Ohio State, probably 2 weeks later, and said, we want to play. We do trust our AD. We do trust our team doctors. We trust our coach. We know they have our best interest. Gene and I got a little emotional over the whole deal. Like, wait a minute, these kids, they do trust what Ohio State's doing, which I think of all the great things that Gene's done and really the great state of Ohio's experienced at Ohio State, that to me was one of the most profound, in my lifetime, to have a group of 18 to 22-year-olds in this day and age say we do trust authority. We do trust our team doctor, who, by the way, Dr. Borches is the best. We do trust everything that's going on. As a result, they revisited, and they're playing this Saturday.
And it's exciting. I know my hometown in Zanesville is really pumped up this weekend. And, you kind of led that into me, and I was going to talk to you a little bit about that. Justin did take this on, and people even, that I communicate a lot with just said how impressed they were with how Justin just kind of brought everybody around and wrapped them up and said, we're going to get this done, and we're going to work real hard to do that. And I don't know if you personally had a chance to talk to Justin about it or gave him any insight, but anything you'd like to add about Justin and what he took on?
Yeah, near the end of my career, we started recruiting Justin, but Ryan Day and Corey Dennis are the 2 people that recruited Justin, and they knew he was a great player. You really don't know until you know. until you get to know how great his family is. I believe his father's a retired police officer. His family is intact, wonderful family. He turned out to be an even better person and leader than he is a player, and he's arguably the best player in America. So that tells you what kind of kid. There's another kid named Jonathan Cooper from Gahanna, Lincoln, that we recruited years ago, and he's one of the best leaders I've ever been around. And I do talk to him and his mom still. That culture right now couldn't be stronger at Ohio State. As a result, those two, but there's so many other people that are responsible for that.
Definitely takes a team to do something like that. You and I've talked a little bit beforehand, before we got together here today, and talked about what's going on in this country and some of the things that we're dealing with, and how we can be impactful in the roles that you and I both serve. And you brought up your Real Life Wednesdays. Tell us the motivation behind that and a little bit about it, Coach.
Yeah, my daughter was a senior in high school. She was a highly recruited young lady for volleyball. And so I would go on the recruiting visits, a few of them, and Shelley went on with me, and then some I couldn't go to. And I went to 3 visits with her, and all 3 visits I would, it's different when it's your kid. When it's someone else's, it's just a different ownership. And I would ask questions, I would say very simply, what are you going to do for my daughter? And I was shocked. They talked about training room. They talked about training table, nutrition, locker room, jersey number. Things as a parent, I don't care about that. What are you going to do to help my kid? Because this is a tough world. And every one of them, when I would interrupt them, on purpose, because I didn't want them to think it through. I just wanted to get a reaction. And I said, what are you going to do for my daughter? And every one of them said, we're going to help her get a degree. She's a 4.0. We don't need your volleyball coach. We don't need that's mom and dad's job to help her get a degree. What are you going to do? This is Georgia Tech. That's where she ended up going. And that's when I came home and I said, wait a minute, I'm the head coach of Florida. We push degree, it becomes like a degree factory, a degree mill, where you get them a degree and get them out, and it becomes a cycle. And I was finding that a lot of our players were being unable to get jobs because a degree, I'm not devaluing a degree, degree's awesome, but degree back when I was young, that meant job, degree equated job. Mm-hmm. That's not the case anymore. It's 2 competitive environments. So what are these universities, specifically athletic departments, doing for these athletes? And that's when we started Real Life Wednesdays. We taught them fiscal responsibility, taught them how to network. We brought in speakers about career paths. We, as I was telling you earlier, we put them on LinkedIn, bought them iPads to teach them how to network and how to organize their thoughts every time they went on for example, every freshman had to go shadow somewhere. If you're interested in sales, okay, good. What kind of sales? Are we talking about car dealerships? Are we talking about pharmaceutical sales as a big industry now? We would help them. They would go shadow, and they would come back sometimes and say, that was awful. I don't want to do that. Well, great. Let's go get something else. And so we would dip their toe in the water. How about this stat? Cameron Mitchell, the great restaurateur, Ohioan, once he spoke to our team, he said 85% of Americans dislike their jobs. It's because you get stuck. And so that resonated with me. I said, wait a minute, we need to make sure these players, these athletes we're in charge of, if I'm interested in law enforcement, we're going to put you a police officer and go drive around and figure out what they might come back and say, I love this or I dislike it. Mm-hmm. If they dislike it, that's your choice. We'll give you some other options. So that's your freshman and sophomore year. And then your junior year, if you earn it, we'll send you on a micro internship. And that means we're going to send you to Goldman Sachs. We're going to send you to, we had a player that wanted to be involved in hotel management. We sent him to Ritz-Carlton down in Naples for a week. And, he made great contacts. We taught him how to network people. Out of the blue, I would always say, grab your iPads. At the beginning of a meeting, I'd say, okay, we're going to take 20 minutes here. You email every contact you've made in the last year and say, how's your day going? This is Jonathan Cooper. I'm just saying, hey, have a great day. We're getting ready to play. And who doesn't want to hear from an Ohio State football player? Everybody does. And that we just encourage networking because everybody has that dream of being an NFL player. Reality is the great ones maybe get 3 years. That means you're 26 years old. You got a lot of life to live. Most, you got to go work for 40 years. And that's our job to make sure that happens.
Yeah, and that's going to be the most productive end result for them is to do that job and to work and to find something that they're passionate about. And
you know what they say? I say this, that jobs don't solve all issues. I think they do solve all issues.
They do.
I think careers, not all issues because there's issues, but you get up every day, go take a shower, go to work, support your family. The chance of success is pretty high in that person.
And I'm glad to hear you say that, because I advocate for that every single day, whether I'm on a campaign trail or just going and meeting with people, and the importance of that job. It just gives them a sense of fullness and worth, and being able to, knowing that they can provide for their family, and it's vital. And if everybody has that job, they feel better about themselves, and they become more structured. Life gets a little bit easier when you have that job and you know that you can.
Well, it's purpose too. You know, I've been in a laboratory for 35 years, and I challenge sometimes people. I say, what I've experienced in my 35 years, the homes. I try to tally it up one time. You know, maybe it's 150 homes a year for 35 years. That's a lot of homes.
Yep.
And that's from American Samoa to Hawaii to New Jersey, New York, Maine, the whole across this incredible country, and I've seen it all. The one common denominator of the purpose-driven families are the head of the household has purpose. That means he has a job and he's supporting his family.
And that gives him great pride. And you know, some of the other things I shared with you, you know, what you're doing with the kids and getting them out there. I ran into a friend of mine last week, and he's been talking about doing this for some time, but it's Bruce Daniels, and Bruce has formed an organization called Impact 60, and he's taken 60 kids, and he started his own STEM school, and then he's started in Fairfield County with 60 kids to go for automobile mechanics. And he's really excited about it, really engaged. He's meeting with these kids, getting them out, the same thing that you did. Just get them to start networking with people, communicating, learning how to have that discussion, you know, outside their comfort zone. And that's what we need to do with these kids to get them moving forward. And I have also become involved in an organization called Run the Race. It's all about helping kids, and to hear some of those stories that these kids share with you, and, you know, not having that ability to have someone to lift them up is challenging, and they have to make that decision, and they do it. And, you know, there was a young man there that, you know, tried to get into college, and he didn't get there. And we need to figure out why he didn't get there, and we need to figure out how to get him there. And I think that's something that, you know, you and I both take that responsibility on. And, you know, something that I've always said, God gave you two hands, a heart, and a mind, and that's a job. You know, even if we talk about colleges or getting that education, you know, not every kid was made to go get a college degree. There's vocational programs out there, there's technical programs, and there's a lot of jobs that need to be filled. And my wonderful grandfather, he'd say, you know, Troy, I want you to sweep the floor up there and empty all the trash in the shop. And I'd say, well, Pop, I can't do that. And he would say, can't die in the poorhouse, Troy. These kids that you're coaching, there's some real talent and some determination to get to the level that they are.
Yeah, I've been lucky for 35 years. I've been in the ultimate meritocracy, you know, and it's when I stepped away from coaching, and I teach class in the Fisher School of Business now, and I'm on 2 corporate boards. I work for Fox College Football as an analyst. So I didn't realize there was really a world out there because I was in a cocoon. I got up in the morning very early, went to the office, watched film, coached the team, went home. And that was really all I did, you know, really never went on a vacation. You know, I did, but I was constantly on the phone or recruiting. And when I say ultimate meritocracy, what I've, you know, the society, the narrative out there right now about, you know, whether you're black, you're white, you're male, you're female, your sexual preference, everything's being just thrown at you constantly. And I'm so grateful, I've never looked at a human being one time like that, because my job was to win a game.
Could agree with you.
And I tell the story about 4th down and 1 against our rivals in that stadium down the street in 2016, first overtime game in the history of that incredible rivalry.
I was there.
That was the most intense 4 hours I've ever had in my life. And so what happens is, I tell the story all the time. So 4th down and 1, just for everybody understands, the official looks at you and they wind the clock. And that means you have 40 seconds to make a decision and execute a play. The ball is going to be snapped in 40 seconds. I'm the head coach. And I remember it's 4th and 1. I know 50 million people are watching this, 200,000 people outside the stadium, 110,000 people in the stadium. It's so loud. And so the way the mind works, I don't believe we are created to handle that situation by ourselves. God didn't give us that. We're humans. So what do? We seek counsel. So I'm going to flip the headset to one human being. I have a staff of 50. The one person I trust. I'm going to say, give me your thoughts and give me the play. That's all I say, because you don't have time to have dialogue. So, you know what, how's the weather? And no, you don't have time. The clock's going. And the person I picked, I can promise you, I don't care what his religion was. I don't care what his cultural background was. I don't care what he ate for dinner. It has no black, white, orange, green, yellow, Polynesian. I don't care. I care because I trust you. You're a competitor and you're a tough person. Those are the three qualities I always tell them. I didn't care about anything else. And the minute he gives me his opinion or she gives me their opinion, now I have to decipher that quickly, then make a decision who I'm going to have execute that. And so once again, now it's down to about 30 seconds. I got the play. I got in my mind. Now I'm going to be what human being on this field am I going to have execute this play? This is real time now. The clock's going. I assure you, regardless of the narratives out there, I don't care if you're black or white. I don't care if Jewish, Christian, or I keep making that point. It's the ultimate meritocracy. What three qualities am I looking for? Competitive spirit. Can I trust you? And are you tough? That's it. That's all that matters to me. And of course, it was J.T. Barrett, who I think the whole stadium knew he was going to do it, which was fine. But he had the three qualities that. So I think when you talk about programs, what excites me about the program you just mentioned, and what Ohio State still does, Real Life Wednesdays, it's all about rewarding hard work. It's about teaching people that you want to get into college, you have to study in high school. Mm-hmm. There's no freebies here. You have to. To me, it's an error when you start giving away. It devalues hard work. It devalues. As long as all these programs like Real Life Wednesdays is all about hard work and development, I'm into it. I think the opposite sets people back, and that's you don't really have to work hard. We're going to pull some strings to get you into this college. I don't know, what are you really teaching? Maybe go to junior college and get your grades up and work really, really hard. Then we can help you get into college. Does that make sense? I just think that's that's an error. I've made those errors before. This person's really struggling. Well, help the skill set. Help that person accomplish with small victories along the way. I always tell people, get them small victories, him or her, small victories along the way. And then imagine that feeling, I did this work. I got to this point. Because if people experience 4th and 1s in their life, like you have and like I have, 4th and 1, you don't care about the things that the narrative, right now society wants you to believe all that stuff's really the difference. It makes no difference.
Makes none at all.
None at all. It's what's in your heart. The three qualities. Are you a competitive maniac? The competitive spirit. Are you tough? And can I trust you? If you have those three qualities, I would always tell our players and coaches, I promise you're probably not going to have to look for work. Work's going to find you.
Yep.
If you have those three qualities.
And I love those qualities. And let's go in a little bit deeper with that, of how you surround yourself. And I know a lot of politicians sometimes, they always say, I. Well, to me, I is not part of it. It's a team. It's a group of people that I put around me that are going to say, hey, that's the wrong decision. Let's talk about that. Or that's the right decision. And as you just said, trusting them. And I have great trust in my staff and what they do. And they know what I expect. The best customer service for this congressional district that we can give them. I want them to be above and beyond whatever the constituents expected. So talk a little bit about how you assemble your team and how important that is.
Yeah, I learned this from Bill Belichick over the years. It started in 2005, our relationship. I was hired at Florida. I was very young. So the two jobs of a leader when you get that position is develop and implement a culture, number one. Number two is talent acquisition, is how do you surround yourself with really talented people. And most coaches that I found, or even general managers in the NFL or people I talked to, never really, and I did it. I was a victim of it. I just didn't give it much thought. If you ran fast, I recruited you. If you were big, I recruited you, which that's a recipe for failure because that's not the qualities that you should look for. And so I would always listen to Coach Belichick come in, and after about the second year, I knew exactly what a Patriot was. I wouldn't even recommend certain players to him because they don't fit his criteria. So I always use, you can tell that I'm a big criteria person. Everything I do, there's always I try to take the subjective out of it because subjective, a lot of times, subjective truths are not truths. And so I came with criteria. It's very similar to what Belichick used. And so we have 5 qualities that we look for. And this is for recruiting, and that's also for hiring a staff. And I had it in bold letters in my staff room. I had it on my desk on a Sharpie on a piece of paper. I would always stare at it because if I'm bringing someone into the organization, they better fall into they better have high scores on these. And the number 1 is competitive spirit. Number 2 is toughness. Number 3 is intelligence. Number 4 is leadership. And number 5 is adaptability. And we always 1 through 5. And so I would always grade the people that I would either hire or that I would recruit. If they didn't have high scores, that's what I learned from Belichick, then I would stay away from them. Notice I didn't say anything about talent.
Right, you didn't.
Because there's a lot of talented people out there that aren't good teammates. And I was really a stickler at Ohio State. We made very few recruiting mistakes at Ohio State, and they're still using these same principles that, if you're 5 out of 5 and those, I give the example, Paris Campbell, Terry McLaurin, Joe Burrow. I know Joe Burrow moved on, but why did we recruit Joe Burrow? He was not a highly recruited player out of high school. Paris Campbell wasn't, Terry McLaurin wasn't. There's a bunch of great examples. Mike Thomas wasn't. But they had those qualities. You start really studying that film, and are they competitor? A maniac competitor. Are they tough? Are they physically and mentally tough? Because football's first of all, it's tough on your body, but it's also mentally tough. All the negativity and the chaos and the pressure. Are they intelligent? It's a complex game. If you have all the skill, but you just don't have the intelligence how to maneuver on a field, it doesn't work out for you. Do you lead? Can you lead yourself? Can you lead others? And that's very easy to, in the world I was in, I would love to go to high school basketball games. And I would just stare at the player, and people would be wanting to talk to me. I would stare at that player. I don't care if he could shoot the ball or dribble. I was watching him during timeouts. If he's a player that puts his head in his hands, if he's a guy that's kicking the bench and throwing water bottles, and I'd usually get up and go home or go somewhere else. But if it was a player that knows how to lead himself first, but then he can lead others, that's a great quality. That's one you can't put a price tag on that one. The last one, and I think it's so true nowadays, is the adaptability, because tomorrow's going to be different than today. There's going to be COVID. There's going to be an injury to a player. There's going to be a 4th down and 1 that, something happened. The player that's adaptable, the coach that's adaptable, the leader that can maneuver adversity, to me, over the years, I'd almost want to move that to number 1 now of what's going on in the society about, there's something going to happen in college sports called name and likeness. The players are going to start getting market value that's coming next year. That's going to change the whole game. So you're talking about the coaches that are adaptable, athletic directors that are adaptable are going to survive. Those who aren't, it's going to go by them. Players, when I first got involved in coaching, it was really hard on the student athletes. They would get a scholarship, but then the scholarship was a bare minimum. You'd see student athletes have a hard time, paying their rent. And it was really unfair. And so we started to change that. And Ohio State was kind of on the forefront. And after we beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, I walked up to the podium and I said, you realize that our players' families, you're asking them to go to the Big Ten championship game. You're asking them to go to the Big Ten championship game. You're asking them to go to a bowl game. If we win that, now we're going to go play a national title game. That's 3,000-4,000 every time you want to go travel places to see your kid play. And I made the point that my kids don't have to pay. The commissioner of the conference, I can promise you, their families get to go for free. Mm-hmm. And you tell me a player's family can't go watch your son play for a national championship because they can't afford it, that's wrong. And I remember stepping down from the podium, and Gene and I are walking away, and Gene says, I'm glad we did that, and I'm glad you did that. We're going to work on that. And a reporter came up to me and said, that was awesome, but, probably next year. And I said, we're not doing it next year. I'm going to try to get it done this year. And Gene was on the phone with the president, Mark Emmert, and within a week, it was passed. They got $2,500 per bowl game, which is still not enough, but at least it was something.
It's something.
So it's changed over years. They get something called cost of attendance now. The players do. It's about $5,000 of just free money that they can use towards whatever. There's a needy student fund that, if there's some kind of issue in your family or you need money, you can go apply for it. It's free money. A lot of players are Pell Grant, which is free money, but you have to be
certain criteria
for that. But this name and likeness has been coming for a while. It was either going to pay student athletes for a job, but the job opens up a lot of issues. This name and likeness, it's market value. So if I'm a Justin Fields, his market value is over the roof right now. That means any car dealership in town, any Nike, whomever, there's going to be some type of regulation. They haven't figured it out yet, but Basically, you get your market value. My concern is two things: recruiting and locker room chemistry. You have one player making $250,000, and the lineman sitting next to him making nothing. It's just something I'm not used to, and I'm sure it'll work out, because I do believe that, there's got to be some type. I don't want to call it revenue share, because it's really not a job. But there's another. I know I won't say some of the names of the coaches, because I'm on a couple committees about this. Their idea is saying just keep college and let pro. For example, if a player wants to go make money, it's called professional sports. Go. That's your market value. Why are you trying to put a square peg in a round hole? Bringing market value to amateur athletics. Eliminate all, right now it takes 3 years for a player to leave college and go to the NFL. The story about Zeke Elliott, when he ran for 250 yards against Alabama in that Sugar Bowl, his market value went through the ceiling. He should be allowed, in my mind, I go to the NFL. Your market value is so high, why come back for another year? I would rather do that than start paying, because that's going to create chaos. And to me, the greatest entity that exists, college athletics. I told you, it's the ultimate meritocracy. You start changing that, I'm worried what this is going to look like in about 10 years.
Kind of goes back to what you said about the team dynamics and how that changes. You and I are in a world where there's a lot of bickering, me more so than even you are now. But in Congress, there's a lot of bickering back and forth and not being able to communicate with each other. And, I go about things a little bit differently. So if I see, as a Republican and I see a Democrat, I'll Google them and I'll look at their district and see if it matches up with the 12th Congressional District, look at their background, have an understanding. And, lots of times where I've been pretty fortunate, there's Congresswoman Fletcher is from Houston, Texas, but she graduated from Kenyon College. So there's a great connection there. So that's kind of how I go about building, that congressional team of who I can work with and try to get through that. Can you talk about your approach to getting that team? I mean, you've got 100 kids in there, and getting them all on the same page can be pretty challenging. What insight would you give Congress?
Well, it's a transparent. Oh, what a! You had to throw that in there at the end. I can get it. I can try to equate it, but that's for the listener maybe, or that's I can fine. Certainly equate it to a college football team, which I think is once again it's the ultimate meritocracy. It's a locker room of every possible background you can imagine, every possible religion. When I was at Utah, I never knew a thing about the Mormon religion. So what did I do? I read a couple books on it. I went to the general conferences. I met Orrin Hatch. I studied the Mormon religion. Not that I necessarily wanted to become a Mormon, but I thought that's my responsibility to show respect for those I lead by learning about it. So I think the number one thing is just showing respect from every culture you're dealing with. How do you do that? Study it. I remember when I first went to Utah, 1/3 of my team were Polynesian kids. And one of my coaches said to me, you need to fly to Hawaii and learn this culture. And I was like, that's the last thing I want to do. I want to go see my family. I've been gone for 3 weeks, but I did it. And you know what happened? I went over there and I studied the Polynesian community. For 5 days, I just went around and met all the Polynesian families that I was in the North Shore, is called Kahuku, of Hawaii. And I was so mesmerized that I said, you know what, we also have some kids from Samoa. I don't know anything about Samoa, so I got on a plane, 14 hours. Only second college football coach ever to do it. I got on a plane for 14 hours. Why? I wasn't certainly going to enjoy myself. I was going to go learn about the Polynesian community, Samoans, that I'm going to be coaching. And so the players, within probably 2 hours after I went to Samoa, that permeated through the whole Polynesian community, that this coach, who's this guy again from somewhere from Ohio, really cares about our people, our constituency, our people, that he's not saying it, he's doing it. And from that moment, I could recruit any Polynesian kid I wanted to, because the word was out that this guy's not the typical, he shows respect. So the first thing is show respect for all involved, the capital R word I would always say. And then the second thing is complete transparency. I would stand in front of our team, and I understand we all have our individual goals, but everyone needs to know that we will fail miserably if we don't have a collective goal. And that's why I use the term solve the mystery. And the mystery is, how do you put others ahead of self? And so that was our big mantra, is But to just say solve the mystery without the transparency, what happens if we don't? We will lose games. Your careers will be, everybody wants these careers. If we're on a bad team, your career is probably not going to make it.
Yeah, your marketability goes down.
Yeah, if we can solve this mystery, what's the mystery? To put others ahead of self. Never been harder than now, with the cell phones, with the, just the me movement. It's all about me. That's the first thing that can destroy a team. If it's about you, and that's where I would stand in front of the team and be completely transparent. Understand we're going to lose games. If you're not willing to do the dirty, the nasty, the hard, that means run down on kickoff at 22 miles an hour and hit something coming at you 15 miles an hour. That's not fun. Just visualize a car hitting a wall at 20. That's a tough job. A defensive lineman, you're getting blocked by 350-pound people. You can't say that this is fun. Why would you do it? Because I'm putting my team ahead of self. And if we all put team ahead of self, you win championships, rings, Big Ten championships. And after that, you usually get drafted really high because you're part of a great program, a great team. So I think transparency, what I witnessed today, and I'm certainly not a politician, but I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen the childish behavior. I've never seen can you imagine running a football program like I watch? I want nothing I can't imagine the selfishness and to realize that's hurting the greater good. And what's a greater good? Putting someone ahead of self. It's not hard to say. It's not hard to figure out. For some reason, it's extremely hard to do.
Yeah, it's hard to execute, and it's a great point, and I appreciate that very much. So let's go into that a little bit. If you were head coach of America, and give me the locker room speech that would inspire us as Americans to lock arms and to challenge this pandemic and build something better. Give me that locker room speech to America, Coach.
Well, I think you really cannot have another conversation unless you move past the respect factor. And I would make that perfectly clear that we're going to have dialogue, and God gave all of us a great mind. I don't believe God made mistakes. Everyone has a great mind. Now you got to use it, and you got to give thought to it and do research. But it starts with the R, and that's where I would start, because right now your opinion should count. And people that's a mandate. You have to be respected of your opinion. Do we have to agree with your opinion? No, but you have to respect someone's opinion. And that's the first place I start. I'm so disappointed that I see people that someone gives opinion and all of a sudden they're called names. Or, someone feels very strongly about something and all of a sudden I feel it. Well, you must be that. I didn't say that. I'm giving you my opinion. And this country says you're allowed to do that. So first you start with respect. Respect all's background, respect their religion, none of that matters. That's your individual choice. And then it starts at the respect their opinions. And a matter of fact, listen to their opinions. You might learn something. I know my eyes were opened, and when Colin Kaepernick grabbed the knee, 2016, I think. And my father was in the Army. My sister was in the Air Force. And my first reaction was, my gosh, what are they doing? You can't disrespect a flag like that, like a lot of Americans. Mm-hmm. And I had some players, so I had J.T. Barrett, whose father was in the Army. I had a kid named Jalen Holmes from Virginia, and he taught me so much that day. We came into a team meeting, and I called them together, and I said, because I love my players, and I really want to hear. I want to be educated on this. I learned stuff that day I never knew about. There are some biases by police officers and all that by all, never said that. But I just wanted to hear. I was showing respect because I wanted to educate myself on what was going on. And what that did is just galvanize our program. Everyone knew that their opinion mattered. And as a result, I was educated, and we were all educated on certain things. So the number one thing is show respect. And then the second part is transparency, that we will not survive this thing, or we will not thrive unless we work together. There's no chance of success on a college football team unless you work together. Zero chance. You want to beat the rival for the 9th time in a row? And I had to throw that in there.
I love it. That's good.
But you have no chance unless we work together. And I mean, no, and I would slow it down. How do we work together? Show respect, listen to everyone's opinion, but at the end of the day, we're going to put our hands in there and say, 1, 2, 3, team. because that's the most important thing. I'm horrified with what I see. You imagine if you just saw that one time on TV at the, with the speaker and the president coming together and saying, you know what, be quiet. Put your hands together. Let's go together. Let's figure this thing out, because without this, we have no chance. Zero. And you got to get by the egos and the hatred and the fear and the stuff that's out there. Like I said, if we ran our college football program like what I see, you'd have a new coach in there within 5 games because you'd be destroyed. Yeah. I know you're talented, but remember, talent only takes you so far.
And that's kind of what Congress has shown itself, that when we got the first CARES package out during COVID, I mean, it came together and got things done. And I think that was a positive note, and we need to continue doing that. Great leaders like that, and I talked a little bit about this morning with some friends of mine of President Tom Niehaus. He was president of the Senate, and he made us sit down in a room, and we were going to agree on fixing something that we both had to fix on. The Republicans were going to use it against the Democrats were going to use it against the Republicans, and we got stuff done. That's what we need to move forward and do now.
Let me ask you this too, Troy, is that on the college football world, you have a scorecard. You're successful or not successful. At the end of the day, you look up at the scoreboard, and there's one team that has more points than the other team. I hate to simplify it like that, but when you score more points than the other team, you win, and you've succeeded. If not, you work extremely hard to score more points. Every congressman, every senator, to me, in America has a scorecard. How's their district doing? Is it thriving place? Is it a place that's healthy and strong? My concern when I start watching television, and this is I'm not talking Republican, Democrat, because that's everyone's opinion. When I look out there, are there scorecards? If someone's district is a train wreck, or if some area is not doing very well, how does that person keep going? How does that, in the world I've been in, you're done.
Yes.
You're finished. If you have too many times that your score is less than the team you're playing, I hate to be so simplified, but the laboratory I've been in for 35 years was really simple. You do all you can to win games. Now, that's complicated. You have to have good graduation rates, good recruiting, good team, good alignment amongst your staff, a good culture, talent acquisition, all we talked about, but that's part of being a leader. Why is there not the same criteria in the world you live in where there's a scorecard? How are you doing? Our district's great. It's healthy. It's vibrant. It's surviving adversity. To me, great job. Move on. If not, why is that person still allowed to continue?
Couldn't agree with you more. And for me, I take that responsibility on myself. Every Friday, I get what you call a fly-out binder that has our constituent cases, that has what's still open, that has how many jobs were created, that has an update on COVID. And I think, as I go around and make friends at Congress, I encourage them to do the exact same thing. Because if I can set that stage for them and set that tone, then they're going to do the same thing. Because guess what? It's not necessarily a score. But if I do a better job than they do, they're going to say, how's Balderson doing? I mean, what is he doing differently than I'm doing in my district that's making his district benefit? So,
and just a personal opinion, too, is just from my years of experience, a great scorecard is the schools in your district. That to me, that's our future. That's our life. Education and opportunity. We talked about hope and opportunity. It starts where? It starts with the family, and then it goes to school. Columbus, we're fortunate. It's not just the private schools, but our public schools in the Columbus area, incredible. Dublin, my gosh, they're wonderful high schools.
Oh, it's fantastic. Great superintendent over there.
You look at Hilliard, you walk in those schools, that's to me the scorecard. How are your schools in your district? If not, what's the problem? Go fix your schools.
I'm so glad you brought that up because it's education. We have kids that can't get broadband. I come from the Appalachia region, and it's some hard knocks down that way. But they become survivors. They figure things out. We're working trying to make sure that we get that done. But education is the top thing that we need to focus on for these kids and make sure they have that opportunity. And that kind of goes back to that young man I told you that I shared a conversation with that kind of got dropped off because of the money. We're gonna figure a way out to get him in front of somebody else again. So.
I agree. I didn't realize when you said he couldn't get into school. If it's financially, that shouldn't happen.
Should not happen.
If it's non-performance, then someone once again needs to help that person to move along.
This kid's already made hard decisions. This kid came from the streets, and he made the decision, I'm not going to live this way. I'm going to bring myself up, and I'm going to figure it out. And, he's part of the Run the Race program. So, I just want to thank you for doing this. This has been a great opportunity to sit down with you. And I know I see you in passing. You are my constituent, by the way. And it's an honor and blessed to be able to serve you and Shelley and your family. And, look forward to doing this sometime again. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy day to do this with me. So thanks, Coach.
It's been an honor, and I'm a psychology major, so I always close with, whenever I teach a class, every time, or my students are probably getting tired of it, but that's okay. And this is about human behavior and human performance. And it's a very simple formula, and it says genetics shape you, circumstances influence you, decisions define you. And just to slow it down real quick, genetics you have no control over. That's our creator. That's you can't pick your parents. You can't pick they shape you. Circumstances, for the most part, you really can't control either. You're from certain circumstances, and they certainly influence you, yet they don't define you. The final piece of the puzzle, capital bold letters, is decisions define you. Your decisions you make. And the moral of the story is the young people that come from really difficult situations, those certainly influence you, but they don't define you.
Correct.
I've had people come from incredible backgrounds and make some horrible decisions, and they're not doing very well. I've had players come from just really, really tough situations, really tough. They didn't select it. They were in it. But they made some incredible decisions along their way. Now they're president of companies. They're incredible citizens, incredible parents, because they made the decisions. Life is about decisions. It's not about your circumstances. Sure, at times there's a tougher road that you had nothing to do with, and that's why people are going to reach their hand out. They should and help you along. But at the end of the day, it's your decisions they're going to make. And I think if I'd love to share that with people in Congress, that to me should be a national motto.
Agree. I can arrange that for you.
Decisions define you. It's not your circumstances. And I just wonder what's being taught now. It's almost like everyone's teaching you're because of a tough circumstance, that's the way it is. It's not the way it is.
Agree.
And I've been in a 35-year laboratory, like I said, that's not true. That's not an objective truth. Objective truth, decisions define you. So let's help people with decisions.
Thank you again for doing this.
Thank
I appreciate it. Look forward to doing it again sometime.